Meet Kayla. Kayla did everything right. She got good grades, she applied to college, she picked a respectable major at a respectable school, took out $67,000 in student loans because that's just what you do, graduated with a degree in communications, and walked into a job market that offered her $38,000 a year to send emails professionally. Kayla is now 28. She lives with a roommate. She has $71,000 in student debt because interest started accruing before she crossed the stage. She has never missed a payment. She still owes more than she borrowed. And every time someone tells her that education is an investment, she has to physically stop herself from throwing her laptop across the room. Kayla is not an anomaly. Kayla is the business model. Because here's the thing about the college degree that the entire education industrial complex would prefer you never think about too hard. The degree itself was never the product. The loan was. And the school, the government, the bank, and the employer who listed bachelor's degree required for a job that involves answering a phone, they all got paid. Kayla got the bill. The United States student loan market is sitting at approximately $1.7 trillion in outstanding debt. That number is larger than the entire credit card debt of the country. It is larger than the auto loan market. It is the second largest category of consumer debt in America, behind only mortgages. And unlike every other form of consumer debt in this country, it is almost uniquely impossible to discharge in bankruptcy. You can walk away from credit card debt. You can surrender a car. You can go through foreclosure on a house. But student loans follow you with the persistence of a debt collector who has read your entire file and knows you don't have a good argument. They garnish wages. They offset tax refunds. They have been known to follow people into retirement and reduce Social Security payments. The federal government built a financial product with essentially zero consumer exit and then handed it to 18-year-olds who had never signed a lease. Now, let's talk about the price, because the cost of college in America has not risen with inflation. It has risen with something closer to aggressive contempt for the concept of affordability. Since 1980, the average cost of college tuition has increased by approximately 1,400%. For context, general inflation over the same period is around 300%. Healthcare, which everyone agrees is catastrophically expensive, went up about 600%. College tuition lapped it twice and kept going. The average cost of a 4-year degree at a private university in the United States is now over $200,000 all in. At a public university, you're looking at $100,000 to $130,000 if you're out of state. And the schools are not apologetic about this. They built climbing walls. They built lazy rivers. They hired armies of administrators. Between 1975 and 2005, the number of administrators at American universities grew by over 500%, while the number of faculty grew by 51%. There are universities in this country where the ratio of administrators to faculty is greater than 1-to-1. You are not paying for professors. You are paying for the organizational infrastructure of a mid-sized corporation that happens to have a quad. And here's the mechanism that made all of this possible. It is called the Bennett hypothesis, and it is one of the most quietly devastating feedback loops in American economic history. The theory, named after a former Secretary of Education who raised it in 1987, goes like this. When the government increases the availability of student loan money, universities raise their tuition to absorb it. Because if students can borrow more, schools can charge more, and the market clears at a higher price every single time. The loan didn't make college more accessible. The loan made college more expensive. It is a feedback loop that's beautiful if you're a university finance department and catastrophic if you're anyone else. Federal student loan originations went from around $50 billion per year in the early 2000s to over $100 billion per year by the early 2010s. Tuition followed every single step of the way upward. This is not a coincidence. This is a system responding rationally to its incentives. Which brings us to the part that is only now starting to crack. Because for decades, the entire justification for this system rested on one number, the college wage premium. The idea that college graduates earn meaningfully more over their lifetime than non-graduates, and that this premium justifies the cost of the degree. And for a long time, the aggregate data supported this. College graduates on average do earn more than non-graduates. That part is still technically true. But here's what the aggregate hides. The premium is not evenly distributed. A computer science degree from a state school generates a dramatically different return than a fine arts degree from a private liberal arts college. A nursing degree generates a different return than a sociology degree. When you actually break down the earnings data by major and institution, roughly a quarter of bachelor's degree holders earn less than the median worker with only a high school diploma. 1 in 4. You went to college, spent 4 years and $100,000, and statistically, you had a 1 in 4 chance of ending up financially worse off than if you had just started working at 18. That is not an investment thesis. That is a coin flip with worse odds and a higher entry fee. And now the employers are starting to notice, because something has been quietly happening on the hiring side of this equation that nobody is putting on a billboard outside a college campus. Major American companies have been dropping the bachelor's degree requirement for jobs that have listed it as mandatory for decades. IBM dropped degree requirements for roughly half its job listings. Google, Apple, and Dell followed. Walmart, Bank of America, and a growing list of Fortune 500 companies have done the same. The reason is not altruism. The reason is that after years of hiring college graduates and watching them arrive unable to perform basic job functions, employers started asking a reasonable question. What exactly are we paying the degree to signal? Because if the degree is supposed to be a proxy for competence, work ethic, and trainability, there are now cheaper and faster ways to measure those things directly. Skills-based hiring, certification programs, and portfolio-based evaluation are replacing the 4-year degree as the minimum credential in a growing number of industries. And once enough employers stop requiring the degree, the financial calculus that justified the cost of the degree collapses entirely. Here's the uncomfortable truth. The college degree was never primarily an education product. It was a signaling product. It was a way of telling employers that you were the kind of person who could commit to something for 4 years, follow instructions, and operate within an institutional structure. The knowledge was secondary. The credential was the point. And credentials only hold their value as long as the institutions granting them maintain their monopoly on signaling. The moment employers find a cheaper signal, the expensive one loses its pricing power. And that is exactly what is starting to happen right now, in slow motion, while tuition continues to rise and 18-year-olds continue to sign promissory notes for amounts their parents wouldn't borrow to buy a car. The trade school and vocational training sector is experiencing something close to a renaissance. Electricians, plumbers, HVAC technicians, and welders are operating in a market with genuine labor shortages and wages that have risen faster than most white-collar fields over the last decade. The median annual wage for an electrician in the United States is around $61,000. A plumber averages closer to $63,000. An HVAC technician earns roughly $57,000. None of these require a 4-year degree. Most require 2 years or less of training, and none of them come with $70,000 in non-dischargeable debt attached. Meanwhile, the median starting salary for a college graduate across all majors is approximately $55,000. You can do the math on that one yourself. And then there is the online education layer that has been quietly building underneath all of this. Platforms offering verified credentials in data science, software development, project management, and digital marketing for a few $100s per course are producing graduates who are getting hired at salaries that match or exceed those of 4-year degree holders in the same fields. Google, AWS, and Microsoft now offer professional certificates that employers are actively accepting as substitutes for degrees in technical roles. The infrastructure for a parallel credentialing system already exists. It just hasn't fully replaced the old one yet. But it is priced like gravity doesn't apply to the traditional degree, and eventually gravity shows up for everything. So, what does this mean practically? A few things worth knowing before you, or anyone you know, signs a promissory note for $80,000. Not all degrees are created equal, and the return on investment varies so dramatically by major and institution that treating college as a monolithic good investment is genuinely dangerous. If you are going to borrow to go to college, model the expected salary in your field against the total cost of the loan before you commit. Run the actual number. If you are considering a field where the salary ceiling is $45,000, borrowing $60,000 to get there is a financial decision that will follow you for a decade. Community college followed by transfer to a 4-year institution is one of the most underrated financial moves available to students. You get the same degree on the diploma for a fraction of the cost. Trade programs and vocational certifications are not consolation prizes. In a market with acute labor shortages and skilled trades, they are frequently better financial decisions than a 4-year degree. And the employer landscape is shifting fast enough that a skills-based portfolio and a relevant certification in a growing field may be worth more in a hiring context 3 years from now than a generic bachelor's degree. The college degree is not worthless, but it has been systematically overpriced by a system that had every financial incentive to charge more and no meaningful incentive to produce better outcomes. And the generation paying for it is doing so with a financial product designed specifically to make sure there is no exit. Pre-ordering hope with non-dischargeable debt. And the schools, the lenders, and the administrators in their expanding empires are all getting paid either way. So, here's where I want to hear from you. When it comes to the college degree, where do you land? Is this A, a system that still works for the right majors and the right schools, and people just need to make smarter choices going in? B, a bubble that's already starting to deflate, and in 10 years, we'll look back at $200,000 degrees the way we look at $700,000 condos in 2006. Or C, something in between, where the degree survives but gets completely repriced downward as employers find cheaper ways to filter candidates? Drop your answer in the comments because this one genuinely splits people, and I want to see where everyone lands.